I think you're right. It is what I've done, and it's been a beautiful, happy accident that it's worked out that way. And I think there's always, now because of course, cool, I want to earn a beautiful living doing what I do. So of course, intentional marketing is now something that my business does. So I'm always, I'm curious about the balance. Am I doing too much marketing versus a value proposition? And it's just, I think it's a good dilemma to have, to be aware of the balance. And I love how you pointed out, because it resonates with me, even when I'm getting something valuable from someone, but I got to give up my email address, as easy as that is, and as freaking free as it is, it's still a lot less, sound cheesy here, loving and kind than just receiving something, zero agendas. You don't even give your email for it. Now, I don't think all marketing can be that way yet. It's man, that tastes so sweet in people's mouths when they get something for absolutely nothing.
Aloha and welcome to another episode of the Groundswell Marketing Podcast, where I connect you to outstanding humans and sustainable ideas. Today's guest is JP Sears. If you haven't heard of him, maybe press pause. Just go on the internet. You'll find that he's got millions of followers. His videos are unbelievably funny. And he's just an incredible human being. Me and him got a chance to get to know each other in Florida, and he'll be up in Calgary here in a couple days and spending a couple days up here. And in this episode, we kind of do a deep dive into how comedy can fit into marketing. It's quite interesting, as well as how he developed this incredible following and all the content he's developed. I think a lot of people really want to pay attention to this episode because he hasn't done this with any marketing dollars other than doing content production. Some really valuable lessons here. So he shares with us some of those lessons as well as what he's up to next. So without further ado, let's just paddle in. Welcome to another episode of the Groundswell Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Scott, and today I have the one, the only, and but I mean the one and only, it is the one and only JP Sears. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Scott, thank you for having me on, brother. I'm happy to be on rapping with you, and I'm also, I feel significant that you've acknowledged that I'm the one and only JP Sears.
Well, you notice I said it twice. I wanted to underscore it because it's how they have the majesties of majesties, the formula of formulas, it's it is more than just.
We'll say more words to describe you so you can feel better than what you are. Got it. And that's my love language.
Yeah. So where are we connecting with you from? Where are you in the world today?
I am in my home office in Austin, Texas. Amazing.
So JP, I'm not going to do a big background of, necessarily your whole life history. It's well documented. I even went on Wikipedia. But maybe you could go and give us just a real high level. This is a marketing show, which is really for a lot of people are thinking, why is JP Sears on the show? And I would argue, and anyone that's followed him, this is a guy that understands marketing. Someone that understands content delivery. He's got a massive following, so he understands growth, and he's got some exciting new things that we're going to dive into about how to apply comedy and marketing. But I think more importantly is the fact that he's in comedy is not something that, in my mind, is easy delivered, but maybe, JP, that's something you're going to share with us today. So maybe just tell us a little bit about your background of your business.
Yeah. The background of my business, it really started in a place far from what it is now. When I was 18, I dropped out of college after 3 months, not knowing what the hell I wanted to do, but I just knew college wasn't what I wanted to do. And from there, I quickly got into personal training on the exercise front and, connected with this amazing alternative educational facility teaching holistic exercise nutrition. So I got big into exercise, doing personal training. And from there, I got pretty passionate about doing nutrition coaching with people, still doing the personal training. And then the nutrition passion quickly led into me being very intrigued about the emotional healing front and stress reduction. Like, wow, people's bodies, their lives can transform just through stress reduction and healing these invisible emotions. So I had my one-on-one client practice that looking back, I can say like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I was doing it nonetheless in my early 20s. And I started teaching courses in my mid 20s around the world on holistic exercise, nutrition, and stress reduction. And then in my mid 20s, my practice became very dominant around doing emotional healing coaching. So life coaching, but specifically I'm helping people help themselves heal the old emotional wounds and pain they carry that hold them back in life. So ultimately these people can step more into their power and feel better in their bodies and better in their lives. As that was going on, mind you, I was telling myself it would be terrible for business for me to let my natural sense of humor out. Because I would always, I've always had a well-developed sense of humor since I was a young child. I'm dysfunctional as hell. That's how I dealt with pain. I'd make people laugh so I could feel significant, so I wouldn't have to actually notice my insecurities on the inside. So it's well-developed, but and looking back, it's so hilarious, this BS story I was telling myself, which was, JP, it would discredit you as a life coach if you let people see you were funny. You gotta be serious. You gotta be like Eckhart Tolle. It was like, I was literally telling myself, like, you shouldn't be like yourself. You should be like someone else. Totally. So as I was doing that, I'm still doing meaningful work. It's just so beautiful. But when I was 33, so about 5 years ago at this point, I betrayed my story. I said, damn it, I keep having these ideas coming to me about sharing my perspective through the language of comedy. They keep coming back. I keep trying to push them down. These ideas keep coming. I got to do it. Still think it'll be bad for business. It'll be horrible, but I got to do it. So I put out my first comedy YouTube video on October 5th, 2014. Not that anybody gives a crap about that detail, just a little OCD. So I put that first comedy video out and it woke something up inside of me. I didn't know it at the time, but my life was going to change inside and out. So I knew something woke up, but I didn't know how big it was going to be.
What was the name of the CD?
Yeah, well, the comedy video, it was How to Be Ultra Spiritual.
Right. The one I've seen.
Yeah. And, then about 2-3 weeks later, I woke up with this brilliant idea. Maybe I could make another video. And so I made another video. And then it became a consistent thing of like, whoa, I'm doing comedy videos. And about 9 months into it, they were taking off pretty well. I was consistent and putting out, some pretty decent comedy and some pretty terrible comedy, but some of it was decent. And opportunities started to open up for me, some sponsorships, and more time rolled along, and now like speaking opportunities and then performing opportunities, and then a couple more years and I start doing stand-up comedy, and then fast forward to today and I'm touring all over the country doing stand-up comedy. And I've, several years ago gave up my one-on-one client practice as my business of comedy has really taken off. So anyway, that's kind of like the quick down and dirty version of how my business got started.
So you basically trial and errored, like you launched this and things sort of came to you and it evolved. But at some point, just seeing the quality of the content and your platform, your ecosystem, you've probably invested either with people or yourself to really piece this together in a professional way. What steps have you taken? And just tell me a little bit about what's that journey been like? Because it's life before was you kind of like, I stumbled into this and I've got this business, but the state you're in now, this new JP is a businessman.
Yeah, that's the businessman. It's been a piece together along the way kind of thing. So, realizing in the beginning of my comedy, I didn't really know where it was going, where it could go, and that it was even going to be a business thing. I thought it was, well, this is just fun to make comedy videos. So you use the term trial and error, and that's absolutely what it's been like for me. It's definitely not the absolute best way to run your business. Like, I'll just screw everything up until I'm forced to find a new way. Could I do it over again? I definitely want to be more proactive, working with mentors and coaches right from the get-go. But, for the first couple of years doing the comedy and handling opportunities, speaking gigs, sponsorships, I was a 100% one-man show. And it blessed to the point that more opportunities were coming my way than what I could handle. Yet I was still trying to handle all of them. So I find myself burning the candle at both ends and in the middle. And I knew, like, I've got to hire someone, but I don't know how to do it. It was just a limiting belief. And then I'll never forget, I was at Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within UPW in Dallas in 2016. And during one of the exercises, you were answering the question, something to the effect of, what do you know you need to do, but you're not doing it because you don't know how? How is the tyranny of the how getting in your way? And my answer is, I got to hire someone. I got to hire an assistant. So I wrote that down, and within a week, I had she's now my executive assistant hired. And that was beautiful. It allowed me to dedicate so much more time to the art, really the value proposition that I have. I could now be working in that. Shortly thereafter, I signed on with a Hollywood manager. He became an integral part of my team. And not too long after that, got signed with CAA, an agency. They handle all the comedy shows. And then, from there, the team has been slowly assembled. An admin lady, and then, about a year ago, I hired a full-time videographer to film my videos, edit my videos, and create pictures for promos and all those kind of things. So it's really, as a kind of businessman, I learn what I need by experiencing the pain of not having it, and eventually working through my stubbornness and realizing, like, cool, I've got to let go of more control of something. I've got to pay someone to do something so that I can ultimately be more in my happy genius, which oddly enough is the moneymaker in my business.
Well, there's a couple things that I want to jump back to that I think that you or someone else might look at the fact that you did trial and error as being unstrategic. I have a different perspective.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting is that I'm almost think it's a unbelievable blessing that you didn't have a marketer and all those systems in place, because they would have basically maybe taken away from the core piece, which is content. The reason you've blown up the way you have is because the content, not because of good marketing. The good marketing has happened after that to also accelerate your business. But at its essence, you've crafted content first. And more often than not, the clients are going, "Hey, I want to do great marketing," but they got this really not great piece of content. Like, that's usually the process. But you've mastered great content that actually it outperforms any marketing, in my opinion. Don't you agree?
I do. And I thank you for sharing that perspective, Scott. That makes me feel like less of an idiot. And it's
no, dude, I'm telling you, it's like the opposite.
Yeah.
When people go, they see it one way, but I see that this is completely the other way around. I'm genuinely saying that.
Oh no, I get it. And I 100% agree with you. And I love you pointing that out. And when I look at that, like, I was in the blessed position when I started my quote unquote comedy business. I didn't need to make any money from it because JP was doing the life coaching. That's how I was earning money. So when I look at that along with the wisdom that you just reflected, I didn't need to make any money. Therefore, 100% of my content was like, oh, here's something valuable. Like it'll make you laugh. It'll give you an insight, hopefully a little bit of both. Whereas I think, hearing your wisdom pointed out, a lot of the dilemma in the marketing, we know like one of the best principles for effective marketing is give people something valuable. So I look back, it's like, oh, that's all I was doing because I didn't have any other agendas for a long time. They're not even an agenda to make money. And it's like, I probably could have monetized sooner. And it's also like long-term growth, probably great that I didn't because people got used to like, JP just puts valuable stuff out, at least valuable to the people that resonate with it.
Yeah. You're pointing out some real valuable marketing lessons. And I think a lot of people, they miss a certain step. They may have missed what you said there, which I think is important. I want to pull back on is a lot of people use like value added content, but they gate it or they're looking for a return out of that. And what you said was that you're just giving without expectation of return. That's actually, I think, the newest form of marketing that businesses are starting to understand because consumers are humans and they just know when they're being, I have to do this, but I'm giving up my email. There's a certain amount of resentment. But when you're doing it straight up for value's sake and you just want to help people, it changes the brand experience, the connection. And I think it's really a human connection. I think that's what you've done.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. It is what I've done. And it's been a beautiful, happy accident that it's worked out that way. And I think there's always, now because of course, like, cool, I want to earn a beautiful living doing what I do. So of course, intentional marketing is now something that my business does. So I'm always, I'm curious about the balance. Like, am I doing too much marketing versus a value proposition? And it's just, I think it's a good dilemma to have, to be aware of the balance. And I love how you pointed out, like, because it resonates with me, like even when I'm getting something valuable from someone, but I got to give up my email address, as easy as that is, and as freaking free as it is, it's still a lot less, sound cheesy here, loving and kind than just receiving something. Zero agendas. You don't even give your email for it. Now, I don't think all marketing can be that way yet. It's like, man, that tastes so sweet in people's mouths when they get something for absolutely nothing.
I think you're playing at a different level when you do that because the classic marketing game is, get people into your funnel and email. And I agree. Once you got an email, it's really valuable. But the way in which you get it, see, what I like about how you've built your business, your brand, is you've magnetized it and people are drawn to it. So if you were to produce something and put it out there and go, yeah, by the way, it costs money, or an email gate or something, you've built so much equity, it's irrelevant. And at some point, people understand that and they're happy to. But in the case of, I think just the way that you structure this, I think a lot of businesses could learn a lot from that. I think this might be a new way that businesses proceed. And then they're gonna have to break through a mindset of just like giving and not, it sounds crazy because I'm on a show about measuring everything in ROI, but don't worry about measuring it initially.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, Scott, from your perspective, I'd imagine you're aware of it, and forgive me if you're not, but Gary Vaynerchuk's old kind of foundational principle in marketing of jab, 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 right hook. I'm curious your thoughts if that's too simplistic, too complex, or if you have other thoughts about that.
No, and I know Gary. I'm part of the 4D program. So I've met Gary and I'm still an alumni now. And I've read that book. And I think that book's pretty straight on. But I think what you're saying is you could just keep when I guess his analogy of jab, jab, it's like he's like on the attack. Where I would maybe switch it up in a new way of thinking is like just give, and then just invite. Yeah, not a right hook, not jab. I feel like that just mindset is just different for me.
It's an aggressive New York mindset, isn't it?
Totally. Well, someone's gonna say, "What a wussy! Give, and invite." Like, what the hell? But I mean, quite honestly, don't you feel better when you just
Yeah.
invited?
Yeah,
Yeah.
depending on how, someone's brain's wired, how the analogy is going to hit. And I'm a softie like you, Scott. So I think the give, invite with an offer version of Gary Vaynerchuk's kind of aggressive thing, it resonates more with me for sure.
Yeah. It's just saying the same thing to a certain degree, right? Like, I think it's that you're buying your time, you're building equity. They're understanding through that process that they understand what your business, your service, your content's about. But and then at some point, if it presents itself and they want to connect with it, then they just have some affinity
Yeah.
for it. So,
Yeah.
but I think at the essence of it, the fact of creating not just good content, but comedy, that's something I wouldn't mind just like putting a new track discussion on. Is like, can comedy be manufactured? Can anybody, you know, like have your creative genius, or is it unattainable? I've got to meditate in a comedy cave with you for 30
Yeah. Well,
days.
in 7 lifetimes, you'll be up here too, Scott. You just got to be upsold into my next program. Yeah. One thing, one,
Sorry, what?
one thing absolutely everyone has is a sense of humor. I mean, it's so intuitive. We talk about a sense of humor all the time, and it is absolutely a human sense, just like your sense of smell, your sense of sight, your sense of hearing, your sense of touch. You've got a sense of humor. Now, is it developed? Do you not use it? Do you use it? And how sharp is it? So here's the good news. Nobody needs to develop a sense of humor. You already got it. And then from where you're at, you can absolutely become trained in how to use your sense of humor so it not only gets developed and it's active, just like any muscle. If you haven't worked out in a gym for 15 years, you're going to have some muscle atrophy. It's going to be weak. And your sense of humor might be that. And it absolutely responds to stimuli, just like anything else in the human physiology. And then once it's stimulated, it grows stronger. Can anybody use their sense of humor in an intentional way to get a result in marketing or content? My answer is absolutely. We can develop
Interesting.
the skills through the art and science of comedy to leverage the genius of comedy, leverage your sense of humor to make your existing marketing, your existing content more effective. Now, might be drinking too much green Kool-Aid, but that is absolutely what I believe about the sense of humor.
That's cool. So I'm looking at, marketers that are listening to this, and the one thing that I think is almost maybe really more challenging to make that statement believable is because I mean, for me, I'm like, really, I'd love to be more funny in my work, marketing and my work. So definitely like to learn how to do that. But a brand manager is looking at how does the brand stay within the lines of the brand voice in comedy, as well as being not
Yeah.
inappropriate. How do you like humor? Just making someone laugh is one thing, but make someone laugh appropriately. Like you sent me something in text a day ago, and I'm like, oh, I should use this for the next time I miss a call or something with. And you're like, no, maybe not. And I'm like, oh yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So again, there's an example. It's funny as hell, but in a business
Yeah.
setting, there's a little bit narrower laneway. So how do you navigate that, or what's your
Well,
thoughts on
first
that?
off, you got to have the wisdom to be aware of what you just said, Scott. Like, you got to know where you're standing. So, giving you an example, I'm a comedian, yet I will modulate my sense of humor based on where I am. 0 to 10, my sense of humor is level 10 when I'm on stage in a comedy club or a theater. It is unequivocally appropriate to be a 10 out of 10, letting the humor fly. About 6 months ago, I was at a friend's funeral. It was about a 0.5 level of humor coming out of me. I mean, it's just so inappropriate. to start cracking big time, massive jokes in the middle of a funeral. Like, we know that, and if I'm at a dinner with friends, like, cool. Now we're looking at like maybe a level 7 or an 8. So same thing with our businesses. If you own a funeral parlor, how much comedy do you want to use in your marketing, your advertising? Maybe a 1, maybe not even that.
Yeah.
If you're marketing, a nutritional supplement, maybe a 3 to a 5 is going to be much more appropriate. If you're marketing pain management services, if you're a chiropractor, you're dealing with people who are in pain. If they laugh, that's probably good for them. Yet they don't want to feel disrespected by comedy. So, maybe a 2 or a 3 is appropriate there. I'm not saying none. I'm saying, like, it's always definitely some, not every word out of your mouth, but it's just a matter of what's the level. So, I think each business owner, each brand manager is the one who can best answer that question. But here's the caveat. If you're a brand manager, business owner whose current level of humor expression in your business is level 0, you got to realize right now you're in a terrible state to answer the question, because your actions have been suggesting a level of 0 out of 10 humor is best. And that's very disconnective, because it is natural for people to experience humor over the course of a conversation. If you look at all your conversations throughout the day, 95% of them will have some level of humor expressed. It might not be enough to get you laugh. Some conversations you will laugh, but others will have a level of humor. It's a 2 or a 3, maybe a 4. So you might not laugh, but it's there, because humor is the language of connection. So when a brand manager, marketing person has 0 humor in any of their content, any of their marketing, that's very unnatural. It's not how people communicate naturally. Therefore, it's very disconnective. So before someone answers the question, what level of humor is actually appropriate in my industry and for this brand, we first off got to take an enema and realize most of us are incredibly constipated. We've sold ourselves a story that being overly serious is what people love. But I don't think that's the case. So once we realize, okay, if we can just accept some level of humor expressed at some time in our marketing is going to be good, then if we can presuppose that, then we can actually have a better chance of answering the question of, like, okay, what level of humor, how much, what's the dose?
Interesting. Like, one of our airlines in Canada is called WestJet, and I don't know if they don't do it as much today as they used to when they first started, but the seatbelt routine where they teach you about the masks and the seatbelts and stuff. Well, those are basically stand-up routines because they just have to, as long as they say them. But the way that sometimes they do it different ways than different flight attendants, but they make that whole experience into it's an experience instead of something you just totally ignore. Yeah. And I just thought it's such a brilliant way to change where to place humor, is like in unexpected places. And I just wanted to, talk to you about timing and where. Like, it doesn't mean, I don't think we're talking about it as a marketing strategy, like your whole brand something else to be funny, but that'd be an example of like intermittent humor at really cool times.
Yeah. And I want to highlight what you said. The goal of using the tool of humor in marketing is not to become a comedian. Like, that's probably terrible for business unless you're a comedian. So, but right. I think a great example, Scott, like the fact that you remembered WestJet's their seatbelt instructionals. One of the most boring things you can experience is an airplane tutorial on how to work a seatbelt that you absolutely know how to work. But you remembered it because they used humor, which means you remember WestJet. So here's a cool thing about humor. It is incredibly memorable when you use it in times and places that people don't expect. And by the way, it is way easier to be funny when people aren't expecting anything funny to happen. Hardest time and place to use humor is when you're at a comedy show and people are showing up saying, okay, you son of a gun, make me laugh. It's like, okay, there's a high expectation. And it's a beautiful challenge to meet. But the cool thing is, you look at the airplane seatbelt tutorial, people aren't expecting to laugh or to have humor, and it's funny because, oh my gosh, like, what I kind of feel cared about, like they went out of their way to like make this thing, and that's just awesome. And I know in the US, by the way, you're hearing my delightful dog Wally bark. He's just.
Did you hear my dogs before?
I was criticizing you.
Yeah. Well, so I missed about 45 seconds of what you're saying because Wilby was chewing on my foot and the other one was attacking her. And Jill came in the room horrified, trying to gather. So there's this total, mayhem thing happening. And I tried to make like nothing happen because I didn't want to disrupt your flow.
And I was criticizing you in my mind. I'm like, this son of a bitch, Scott can't control his dog on a podcast.
You're criticizing me in your mind.
And then my dog drops the punchline. He's like, you too, you redheaded son. I love it. So the cool thing is, and I was going to say in the US, we have Southwest Airlines, and their airline attendants are notorious for making funny announcements. Again, it's a time and place where people aren't expecting to laugh, but because someone took the care to say something funny, and by the way, just trying to be funny is oftentimes very funny when people aren't expecting to laugh. Some of the worst humor is getting a lot of laughs on these airplanes. It makes me feel insecure as a comedian. And again, people remember Southwest Airlines, which is a pretty crappy airline, because people are using humor. Now, so the cool thing is, I would guess 95, maybe even more % of the wonderful weirdos listening to this podcast, you're in a marketing space, an industry where humor isn't like the dominant love language, which means you've got it pretty easy. There is a lot of beautiful opportunity. Now, can I get a little practical for a second, Scott?
Okay. Cool. Are you going to put on some medical gloves or something?
Yeah, we're going to do a metaphoric prostate exam here, ladies and gentlemen. Wouldn't it be funny if I'm like, airline like seatbelt announcements are the only time it's appropriate to use humor in marketing, like nothing else. No, here.
Did I miss that?
No, I just I'm fantasizing. But just one practical idea that it's just got so much room for return on investment. The very first 5 seconds of a marketing video, it could be however long it is, a 1 minute long video, 5 minute long video, 45 minute long video, however the hell long this marketing video is. If you make the first 5 seconds where something funny happens, humor is a hook. And what is that funny? There's so many possibilities. Physical humor works very well as a hook in a marketing video. Saying something incredibly unexpected is a great humor hook in the beginning of a marketing video. So I'm a fan of practicality, and it's just one of those things where marketing videos, there's so much room for just a little bit of humor to become very effective, because, in the first 5 seconds of the video, that's when most people are going to click off. But if you can give them a reason to stay on board for those 5 seconds, you're going to have a much better chance of having them on board for a deeper watch time of that marketing video. Or heck, if it's a free content video, awesome. You want people having their eyeballs on your content longer, so you can beat that 5 second click off death barrier very easy with humor hooks. Does that make a little bit of sense?
Yeah, like it's like one is a tension hook, but I think there's something more going on. When you laugh, there's a little bit of like a pattern interrupt because you're in one state and you're in next you're another, and that creates a bit of a transformation, and you're in a very good state. So now you're receiving the content in a way that I think is very different than when you're passively attracted to something because you're like that color or that brand or something. I think there's something different that happens here.
Yeah, I agree. And amen to your insight on the shift of state. I think anybody in the marketing world would know the worst state for your audience, your customer to be in is a defensive state. We're just like, I'm resonating at the energy of objection. Like, I'm going to protect myself against what you want from me. So, like, I'm just closed off. We know, like, people aren't going to accept our information. They're certainly not going to make a purchase when they're in a defended state. Beautiful thing about the humor state shift that you brought up is it's a state shift into an undefended place. Because humor, when something funny is happening, humor, it's a playful language. And when we're in a playful state, you look at a child playing, that's our psychology symbolized externally. When we're in a playful state, we're not defended. In fact, you can't be in a playful state if you are defended. So
when you say defended, does that mean like I'm feeling like I have a defensive barrier?
Yeah, and it can be mild. Okay. Like, I see a marketing video from Scott. He's just wanting my money.
Oh, totally. Well, they should defend themselves against the power of my marketing language.
I've already sent you my credit card details 11 times during this podcast, Scott. You are manipulative.
Yes, and tell your 12 friends.
Predatory. So yeah, that's what I mean by a defended state. But if you can get people laughing, even smile, even just like the cheesy airplane seatbelt thing, now they're in a playful state, which means they're open. Now, we don't want people to be open so we can take advantage of them. I don't advocate predatory brainwashing by any state. But if they're actually open, then they can realistically consider what we have to say, and maybe that can better their lives, and they can actually take our offer in and consider it rather than objecting it, rejecting it before they even have a chance to consider it because they're in a defended state. But the humor can shift their state into a playful, undefended state where they can consider real fast, in my experience.
I think a lot of businesses, like, there's not many that'll say, no, we need to do something funny, and they just go, just be funny. And a lot of times, in order to kind of create that humor, it takes some bravery on behalf of the client, I find, or the individual. And how do you navigate that when you're dealing with, individuals that you go, look, this will be really funny. And they're somehow, maybe they think maybe it's a corporate situation, or maybe you haven't experienced this, but in my experience, that's usually me trying to get the client to be braver. And they usually water it down until it's not funny because it's safe. You know what I mean? It's just safe.
Yeah, man. I've had my soul sucked by, brands I work with where, and I've learned to become very selective of who I work with because I don't like having my soul sucked and having like, okay, let's see the script, JP. Cool. We're going to pass that on to our lawyers. And then all these other non-comedians, they're going to water it down so that nothing about it will be funny or effective. So let's do that.
Yeah. And your name's on it, right? So then it's like you're going, I don't even want to put my name to this because if that's someone goes, JP came up with this, that knows what they're talking about, then you would feel like you're letting your audience down of the brand you've built.
Yeah, it'd be an embarrassment, and my father would become more proud of me for my thong photos on Instagram than he is for my humor content. And your wisdom pervades you once again, Scott. Is it a matter of bravery? I think absolutely. Risking letting go of control of how people perceive you is always necessary to deliver humor. And businesses, I want y'all to know, I realize for you, that means you're risking your customers potentially not liking you as much. And the risk is always greater than what we or we imagine it's greater than what it is. But bottom line, we know, like, if we do the wrong thing, we could lose money, we could lose customers. So I get, absolutely, there's a risk involved, and it takes bravery to approach that risk. Yet, when we do risk humor, the payoff is great. And I think, in my opinion, brands I've worked with where humor is new and I'm introducing that to them, small doses, I think, are typically the best way to do it. Just like, if you're going to buy a stock, you're probably going to stay diversified and not put 100% of all your money into a stock because the risk is too great. So are you going to go for a 10 out of 10 on the humor and like, okay, let's turn all of our marketing content into full humor content? Absolutely not. That risk is too great. I would not recommend it. Yet, do you actually have to have the human emotion of bravery in order to risk using a little bit of humor for the first time? Yes. Is there a potential downside? Yeah, there's a little bit of a potential downside. Is there a potential upside? Absolutely. And the potential upside is they'll fall more in love with you because you're doing this human experience called being humorous, highly connective. Your content, your marketing becomes much more memorable. And another part of the payoff, like we mentioned, is now your audience, your customer is in a better state. They're open, they're playful.
There's a couple things I want to unpack from that again. So, I believe that marketing has to shift to deeper human connections because people are craving it more than ever. And that creates a point of differentiation between brands that are really treating their customers like individual human beings. And what you described there, in my mind, is what creates a deeper human connection, some level of vulnerability. And I think that that's what we're talking about, that bravery is for them feeling vulnerable, that, and a lot of times in humor and business, sometimes be a little self-deprecating and it could just work brilliantly. But some people are just feeling like vulnerability is like somehow that'll embolden their enemies or something. Like, what's your take on, like their enemy companies and stuff, on being vulnerable, the human connection? Isn't that what you're talking about? Is sometimes humor, you got to be a little vulnerable?
I very, very much agree with that. Vulnerability, playfulness, giving, and passion. In my opinion, those are like the four primary energies that make a human, and therefore those are the energies of how people connect. And
sorry, what were those four again?
Vulnerability, playfulness, giving or gratitude, and then passion. And by like, I'm a comedian, I'm biased, and part of me would love to say like, playfulness, the humor, that's the most important one. That's the only one. It's like, no, I think they're all important. And
you have dark humor.
Say that again.
Which isn't very playful, right?
Dark. Yeah, it's a good question. If dark humor is playful, when dark humor is someone's humor language. Much like there's 5 love languages.
Oh, as opposed to being like sarcastic where you're hurting somebody, I guess, right?
I like how you're like, humor is a destructive force. Humor.
Well, I'm just, what I'm saying? I was just trying to playful. I was like, I kind of have a little bit of a dark sense of humor, and I'm like, I don't feel very playful.
Well, yeah, and you might not call that state playful yet. In my model, like, your dark humor, if that's natural for you, and you're not actually hurting yourself or someone else with a dark humor, that would qualify as playful. But and then there's also goofy humor. There's sarcastic humor, along with dark humor. So there's different humor languages.
I'm really sarcastic to my dog.
I'd imagine he has a very dry sense of humor back to you.
What's
I'd imagine your dog has a very dry sense of humor back to you.
He's indifferent. He's just like, he waltz around just like, that's all you got. Like but he's so loyal, but he like literally he's like a cat. He can just like up and be by himself, and he could just do without you if he wants to be. He's not like completely reliant, and like he's happy to see you. And then he'll just be like, yeah, I'm doing my own thing. He's a very different dog for sure.
Sounds like he's got some cat DNA in him.
Well, when you meet him, when you come to Calgary, you'll know exactly what I mean. I mean, he is, anybody that's ever met my dog or my wife's dog, Wilby, who's now really my dog, he is a character in himself. And he looks like, to give you a visual, he's a Bichon, Brussels Griffin, long hair. And when I hold him in my arm, he looks like a harp seal. You know those little seals that you club for their skins? Those whale skins? He's like that. He's like all fuzzy all around the neck and stuff.
Well, I'm actually going seal clubbing this weekend, so I'll take a look at the seal.
Yeah, please take a picture. We'll do a side by.
I'm a vegan. I hate animals, so of course I go out and club seals. But to your...
I like bacon. What's that?
To your point, Scott, which is such a great point, I think vulnerability and connection is absolutely the present day marketing. It didn't always be that way, yet times change. And we just seem to live in a time where what people want is the vulnerability and the connection. And playfulness being a way to facilitate the connection. And when we look at when we can actually be marketing in a human way, we're like personable. We've got like a personality to us, which is how we connect. We meet so many human needs someone has. I mean, we all have a need for connection. And when we feel connected to, we feel like we belong. And when we feel like we belong, we feel understood. And we feel relatable with the person or business that's connecting to us. So
I think it's like a state of honesty too. In this, like when you're vulnerable, there's some honesty there. And I think people are craving, it used to be attention, like what's faster, brighter, beautiful. You know, the Gary Vaynerchuk is about attention. I just finished an episode with Don Peppers, and I believe the same thing he does, which is trust. And trust is built upon honesty. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I think even present day, there's a little bit that I'm seeing where people realize like this connectivity, authenticity trend, and it's a beautiful trend. Yet I see some people using it in an inauthentic way where it's like, hey, we're using the facade of authenticity to try to be authentic, to try to get stuff out of you. And it's like, yeah, and people are always smarter than that because they're like, I don't trust that meter goes off. People are always smarter and way more tuned in than what sometimes we want to give them credit for.
That word, I think, trips people up. And why I say that is because when someone goes in marketing, and by the way, the guy that wrote the book, Joe Pine, he's brilliant. This isn't anything that we'll talk about what's great about authenticity, but when people use it, it's like they go, you need to be more authentic. You can't be more authentic. You either are or you're not.
I think for me, it's kind of like a Zen concept. Like, you don't need to add anything to be authentic. You need to remove what gets in the way of your authenticity being expressed. And I think sometimes what gets in our way, both as people and also entrepreneurs, businesses, marketers, what gets in our way is our expectation of how we should be. That absolutely constipates the colonic channel of our authenticity. I shared with you in the beginning, I wasn't being authentic as a life coach, not letting my humor out. I mean, the real me was there connecting with people, but not all of me. So I realized I needed to I thought I'm supposed to be serious. A lot of businesses think they're supposed to only be serious. So that's something that needed to be removed before my authenticity could come forth in a bigger, bolder way. So I think the Tao is saying, ask not what you need to add, but ask what you need to remove in order to allow your authenticity that's already there to shine brilliantly.
That was a really good riff you just gave there. Big time. I couldn't agree more. I think that when you're talking about how things need to be removed for businesses, they're always trying to add things. And I think there's a bit of movement in my mind to a little more of minimalism marketing and mindful marketing, as I might like to call it. And it's, in this age of all the social media and stuff, it feels to me like eye pollution a lot of time. And one of the visions I have for my marketing career is to make marketing an experience of like a beautiful interaction, not interruptive pollution, which it is today, right? And I think in order to move there is what you're espousing, which is to come at it with, with congruency. And I think that's the thing that you were saying is it's not only you being more authentic, is the things that you're doing when there's congruency. You can tell when a business, individual brand, personal brand, when there's congruency, their brand really flies and people wonder why they connect to it. And I think that's another aspect of authenticity. It's connecting all the way through to your purpose and your mission. Am I right?
Well, I have no idea if you're right, brother, but I definitely agree with you. So my definition of when someone is right is when I agree with them, then they're right. So you're right, Scott.
Well, why I'm saying is it right for you based on what you're experiencing. And, what would be that sort of like, what's your mission and your vision? Like, what's the purpose of your life? If you're, some might think, is it just to make comedy? Like, give us a little insight, a deeper insight about what that congruency looks like and what we can expect going forward.
My view of comedy, both for myself and honestly how I advocate people use it in their businesses, is comedy is only a tool. It's a means to a greater end. So my mission is to help people grow, heal, and awaken through conscious comedy and, through the tool of conscious comedy. So that's what's important to me. And, and honestly, I'm not even that attached to the tool of comedy. Talked to me last year. It's like, this is the tool. I'm the carpenter with only a hammer. So everything needs to be hammered. Everything needs to be humored. And, I'm a comedian, so I kind of get that. But also I'm realizing there's other tools I'm being called to use. And so moving forward, something I got clear on at the Date with Destiny, you and I were both attending together not too long ago, I'm to go back to doing transformational events. So before I was doing comedy, I was doing workshops and transformational events on a smaller scale. And I'm being called to do those on a bigger scale. And they'll be very sincere offerings. And will I be my natural self? So some humor comes out? Absolutely. But it's not, hey, come laugh for a day. It's, hey, come immerse yourself and transform your life today. So helping people grow, heal, and awaken. Now moving forward, conscious comedy, yes. And transformational events, transformational teachings, yes. So that's something on my horizon that's actually a beautiful change here recently and moving forward.
That's really exciting. And it was cool when we were at that event, like Chuck Liddell from UFC, he stood up and he shared his vision going forward. And I was just like really touched by it. I was like, man, this guy's a really beautiful soul. He really wants to make an impact. And that was a cool experience.
It really was. And you mentioned bravery earlier, Scott. I was struck by Chuck's bravery because here he is. The world knows him as a tough guy. I mean, geez, a former UFC champion. Not only a former UFC champion, but, he's a pioneer. The guy's got a freaking mohawk, for crying out loud. His whole brand image is he is the tough guy amongst the toughest guys. He's a tough man's tough man.
Right.
And we saw him cry on stage. He wasn't talking about, hey, what I want to do next in MMA or this or that. Or it was we were hearing from his heart. We saw him embody bravery. And it was incredibly transformative.
He looked so nervous, but then he killed it. I was just like, everybody in the crowd could feel for him because he was just going so far on a limb. And I think because of his identity or what people know him as, and he's just incredible. I mean, I loved him before. after that, and I saw him in the hallway before and had a couple of high fives with him and had just a quick exchange. After that, his like stock went way through the roof, and it was that vulnerability.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the bravery is always, it's like the other side of the coin of vulnerability. You can't have one without the other. And what you mentioned, like with business owners, like, man, it takes bravery to do something different. And if that's integrating humor into your marketing or really doing anything else different, you're embodying the bravery, you're embodying the vulnerability that you and I got touched by seeing another man named Chuck Liddell embody. So I think if you and I were touched, it just speaks to, that's the natural human instinct when we see someone express bravery and vulnerability. And I dare say, like, wow, what if we allowed our customers to experience even just a drop of that, because we embody bravery and vulnerability in business. By the way, how crazy do you have to sound? Like, just imagine our grandfathers 50 years ago. And here you and I are talking about business strategies of bravery and vulnerability. It'd be like, son, you got to join the army. You're soft. But the world's changed, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny you'd say that, because we're in this really interesting tipping point, and it brings up like where I'm going to go down. I'm touching on it in my book, and I'm going to go down this path a little bit. And this year, and you're part of this, is this whole topic around mindful marketing and how, like you called it, conscious comedy. And to me, it's like most red-blooded Americans and Canadians would be like, even hearing this would just, 20 years ago would just be like, they'd be wincing. And now this is real, right? I don't even know what words to describe. I just, and for me, I'm being brave, I feel, by trying to bring forward some of these really interesting things. Like I've been talking with Master Co, and he talks about energy can impact business communications or use feng shui in retail spaces or in advertising. Or I'm going to get, been talking to Rob Bell and also Guru Singh. So talking about mindful marketing and how, if marketers were to, even in the planning stages, were to even go so far as like meditating and focusing on what's the needs of the customer. I know that sounds really almost like strange today, but I believe that's the future, where boardrooms will meditate about the concerns and needs of their customers if they really care, and their whole sole purpose is to serve their customers. I think that's where it's going to go. And some people are going to go, holy Scott, you just lost me. But this is the area that I'm going to explore the science behind that.
Well, I am personally so grateful that you have the bravery to be a leader in, I mean, damn it, what is a new paradigm, mindful marketing, and what the reaction that's evoked out of me when I hear that term, Scott, is relief. Like, wow, what a breath of fresh air. Like mindful.
Well, most people, when they say the word marketing, I think there's a research done on this topic. When you think of marketing, the number one response is liars, right? And it's wrought with them. But I believe that this is my craft. I believe that I want to change, and I believe I can change the way in which marketers define themselves as I think a noble enterprise to help entrepreneurs and their dreams come to life and see their success, especially when they're helping humans become better or make the world better. Like marketing should add a lot of fuel to that, and the right people behind that should be the ones that accelerate it. And I feel like this is where we're going, or I love to believe this is where we're going.
Well, I truly believe that. And I think it's where we need to go also out of necessity, because luckily people have a low tolerance for deception, even if it's not deception, but just like this visual pollution marketing that you mentioned. And by like no criticisms, I know I've fallen into that as well. I've been guilty. So people's tolerance runs low. So I think the necessity to change, where it's like marketing without the marketing, like it's just mindful marketing.
I think the mindful marketing isn't just thinking in terms of what's best for the customer. It's one more step. It's actually pre-choreographing situations that they would have friction or any amount of suffering, if you want to use that word, in their interaction with your business, and you anticipate it and make it beautiful. Example being Apple. I go to buy my same movie. I forgot I rented it or bought it like 6 months ago. It does me the service of going, you already paid for it. Thank you. You could have easily smoked me for another $10, but you stopped in the tracks and you made that experience, made me pause and prevented me from spending money necessarily. That is a moment of truth where I think mindful marketing is moving toward to create a better human experience.
Yeah. And by the way, like what percent of trust went up inside of you for Apple when that happened?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't even think twice thinking, do I have to look and see if I've already bought it? Like, do you know what I mean? And there's all these other subscription services like, AOL that were notorious for just like getting it impossible to get out of your contracts and stuff. It's just, and look where they are today. I believe this is going to accelerate this idea of entrapments. And I'm going to, like things like even ClickFunnels where people know they're in a funnel. It's like, yeah, I know I'm in a digital trap, more or less, that's going to try to convince me to, on the other end, to pay you money. Your brain automatically goes, like, as you said, into defense. And whatever happened to pop-up ads? They were effective until they weren't, because you just went, this is annoying. I believe that businesses that are forward-thinking today on their strategy, they go the other direction. It seems counterintuitive. And I think that's what I loved about this opportunity to talk with you, because you started with, at the essence, something of extreme value that's transformational in content. You came by it honestly. I think I love the story that you used to call it a happy accident. But for me, being a marketer, sort of analyzing patterns in different people's success, I see your success as being brilliant and a great example that people could follow in terms of a strategy. Imagine if people flipped the script and did what you did, going, we're not going to put any boosting dollars. It's got to live or die by the quality of the content. How would that change content production today?
Wow, I love that. What if that was the mindset with content creation? It's got to live on its own 2 feet without boosting dollars. I dare say, Scott.
That is the premise of my book.
That sounds like mindful marketing, bro.
Growth. Yeah. Because if right now, I believe it's a false positive. We live in an era where someone produces a suboptimal product and they browbeat people to succumb to view the product and eventually get, and purchase, right? It works. However, what if the ad rates change and so forth? So I believe that to be sustainable is to have this as a discipline. It's easy to take the gondola to the mountain, but man, if you trained every day, when the gondola breaks down, you've been training and going up and down the mountain, you're going to be able to get to the top. And that's what I believe is what I call patience is the new growth hack.
Well, I think that's beautiful. And I think having patience, that sound a little cheesy here, but it puts us in a true abundance mindset. Whereas I think oftentimes when we don't have patience, we've got the sense of like, I've got to squeeze as much money out of these people as soon as possible. But if we backtrack that, we realize usually that's coming from poverty consciousness. There's not enough and there won't be enough. So I've got to get as much of it as I can now. But with patience, what if just being patient without even knowing it, it shifts us inside into the abundance consciousness? I don't know, but I'm curious about that.
We're on the same page, my friend. This is what I want to train businesses to understand, that growth hacking, real growth hacking, is not chasing these tactics. It's not these short-term tactical bumps, but by delivering value over a long time, you create a groundswell support. Like your followers are solid. That's a groundswell you have, and you have momentum with that groundswell. And that took time. That didn't happen overnight. A lot of people maybe don't really understand. Maybe that's something you can touch on. Like how long, although maybe you were hitting it pretty quick, but a lot of businesses take a lot of time before they really take off, especially content.
Yeah.
Is your story different? It was just
In the scheme of things, I think the size of my following now, it's several million. And in the scheme of things, it built relatively fast. I don't know exactly the metrics, but it was a relatively fast build. And by the way, and that's not necessarily the best expectation to have. It's just kind of like a blessing when it happens. But how it happened, going back to what we were talking earlier, is I was doing nothing but the give, give, give. I wasn't even doing an
Mm-hmm.
ask or an invite for, man, at least a year and a half. It was just give, 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 give. And giving that value, it allowed my audience to grow at a unusually fast rate. Getting someone to subscribe to the YouTube channel or like on Facebook or follow on Instagram, much easier to do off just a valuable piece of content than it is off of a marketing piece of content. So, yeah, I think I have the mindset of I just want to give value to thank for the speed that the following grew.
Right. So, so that almost is like a piece of math, right? Like quality of content, times human connection, whatever. You can kind of come up with an algorithm where it's what you're talking about, the DNA of what you've done is there is a repeatable mathematical pattern, right? Not to dehumanize it, but really that's kind of the essence of what this is. It's logic. I'm trying to appeal to people's mind on that. A lot of this stuff, abundance mindset and different things, some of the people that are in it are scientists and they've measured this stuff. Like when you say abundance, someone's going to go, that sounds really hairy-fairy. But because I've been around this and I'm studying this, it doesn't to me, and maybe to some listeners it doesn't either. But I think that's the shift that we're talking about is the way that we think that in order to make a sale or in order to grow a business, we have to think like it's 1950 still.
I like that. I like that. And can you say more about why we have to think like it's 1950? I want something to click in my brain about that.
Like we don't.
Oh, gotcha. Don't.
Like, so it's like if I was going to go back further in time, be like more like the corner store. So maybe like we got to think more like back in the day when the corner store and we got to know everybody and it was like there. But I was thinking about 1950 or just, maybe that's the wrong timeline that I was referring to. I was just thinking like what has gotten us here. When I was thinking 1950, I was thinking like Marlboro cigarettes when they're having a cigarette with their kids and going, it tastes great. So that's maybe the image I had in my mind that I should have painted more clearly. And today that's just so offside, but yet where it's going is we're still nowhere near. Because if you reflect back and see how far inappropriate and wrong a lot of those commercials are, they're quite famous and people just cringe going, I can't even believe we did that. I believe that our future generations are going to look at what we're doing today and just have the same disdain if we don't change quicker.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. And by the way, like, thank God for change. When you mentioned 1950, I'm like, oh, cool. Like Scott wants it to be that way because he likes racism. Is that right? No, of course that's not the truth. But we can look back. I mean,
I clearly didn't use the inflection like 1950 was wrong. I was like, no, we got a long way to go.
Now, bro, just be yourself. No, I'm kidding with you. But man, yeah, I mean, we can all look back at the stuff that was happening in the 1950s and so much that's cringeworthy. And I think the funny thing is how we live today, we pretend that this won't be cringeworthy, to the generation 50 years from now. Yet I love your insight of like, man, like it will be. So let's change because some of what we do, we're living in a cringe. We just don't know it. Like, it's like, does a fish know it's swimming in water? No. Does a person know it's living in a cringe? No. Until a wise man named Scott comes along to wake us up to it.
That's right. Awaken the marketer within with my co-host, JP. We should do it together. Mindful marketing, awaken your inner marketer and conscious your e-commerce consciousness or conscious commerce.
Is it a spiritual show or a marketing show?
Spirituality meets marketing. So we do like yoga before we start our creative meeting. Our we could think of a few things that we could do. I'm sure,
some like drink green juice that'll somehow be spiritual and effective.
Well, I think with your whole humor around yoga and the industry and stuff, it's like poking a little bit fun of the seriousness of it. You could do the same with marketing. Once marketing is now becoming like more, I believe, more mindful, I think there's going to be a lot of room to make fun of it too. When people take it too seriously, and I view it right now. I think it's funny when people go, "You need to be more authentic and connect with your customers." I know I'm saying the same thing, but the way in which they're saying it, it's like I think there's room to be kind of fun of it because they're not really saying that. If they really did, they'd make more of a personalized effort or something. I don't know.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
I love that.
But it's hard to create intimacy at scale. And I think that's the one thing that I think humor does is it creates intimacy at scale when you don't necessarily have to leave a voicemail for every one of your subscribers or something like that. Because it's a connection.
And what I'm about to say is not scientifically validated. And by the way, nothing I've ever and also nothing I've ever said has ever been scientifically validated. So I'm just here worthlessly speaking.
Wait a minute. I thought this topic was the science of comedy.
Maybe.
Conscious comedy.
I'll work on getting a scientific validation. But, on your thought of having an intimate connection at scale, that seems impossible and also maybe possible at the same time. And I think for it to be possible, and maybe what I've on my good days been blessed enough to do a little bit with my audience, to have a sense of intimacy and an intimate connection at scale, we got to wake something up inside of our viewer, our customer, our audience, because it can't come with like, hey, here's an intimate phone call from me to you with 3 million people. No, but if you look at the word intimacy, into me, I see, it's all an inside job. So when we can help someone wake up that inside job of experiencing their chemical reactions that comes with intimacy within on their own because they see something in our content because it's connective, it's playful, it's vulnerable, and it's giving, it's just something great, then I think that's a way we can actually achieve the impossible of scaling intimacy.
Oh, dude, you just nailed it. I mean, I've broken up my 4 sections of my book into build, relationships with customers, give, not get, grow organically, and finally transform to create loyalty. What you're referring to is creating transformation. I believe that the future of loyalty is around this, what you're describing, the very event that you're looking at putting together. Because when you create a transformation for customers, so it could be transforming their results if you're a B2B company, or transforming their health because you're a health coach. That transformation creates loyalty and further an advocate. When loyalty, as we hear the word today, is based around points, which is more or less entrapment. It's like, I'm going to give you enough points, like my airline, to not want to go somewhere else. And I'm at a point where one of my airlines has a lot of points, but I hate the airline. And I'm like, fuck, I got to fly them because now I want to make sure I use those points. That's the old model. And what you just described is what I believe is the future model of loyalty.
Yeah. That old model is kind of like the relationship dilemma of like, you can't leave me because you're nothing without me. And I'm like, oh, it's a pretty crappy energy to be in a relationship.
You're going to die if you leave me. Well, I like the one saying, you're better off with me than without me. And that's the way you say to yourself when you with the clients going, look, I'm going to help them. It's meant to be a positive thing, not like what you just described, which is you're better off with me. And if you're without me, you will, meet your demise.
There's some fear-based marketing for you.
That's a great way to maybe end this podcast, or maybe not. This was supposed to be comedy. It was just uplifting.
Well, we can end it with this. Scaling intimacy, that's something the porn industry has figured out.
Nailed it. They have. And that's why it's grown so big. So we just need to, actually, what's the large porn company?
I'm going to pretend like I don't know.
Oh, shoot. Oh, I actually don't know. It'll come to me. But the guy that started, he was in Rolling Stone. He's in a Platt partner. And yeah, he is, his name's escaping me, but he's brilliant. I had a really great chat with him, just an incredible human, and has built a really amazing business. Now, whether I agree with it or not is another matter. It doesn't really what I'm trying to, talk about, but make no mistake, like that's a full-on business and it's run by a very smart guy. So.
There will be no mistakes made. I believe that. That's fascinating.
Not that it was implying that. I don't know why this is probably the best podcast, and the ending is like trailing off, like we're slowly limping away from this podcast. I usually like to leave it on a really snappy and we nailed it. It's a perfect way to close it, but that's just not happening right now.
Being real, I like that. Let's just lay down and die slowly here. Oh.
Slowly let us bleed off the end of the podcast. Well, dude, it's been so awesome having you on the podcast. This is I was so looking forward to it. And I think a lot of people are probably surprised by, just that there's more to this than just, hey, I'm showing up and doing funny skits. I think that's one thing that I recognize anyways.
Well, I appreciate that, Scott. And I really value you having me on. I mean, I'm honored. I know you have a very high level audience. So hopefully something that we've shared today can be of at least a little bit of value. And man, I'm so grateful to have you as a friend. It's just such a joy to meet you and connect with you over the past couple of months. So I'm grateful to have you in my life, brother.
Likewise, man. I think we'll be doing more stuff together, and your upcoming events. Do you have something organized yet, or is it still to be unveiled?
There's some organization, but technically it's yet to be unveiled. So you can stay tuned. You can check out my website, awakenwithjp.com, for the current listing of events, which we'll be unveiling here real soon.
Awesome. I'll put it in the show notes. Even if the show goes up, I'll retroactively go back and put it up. So if you're listening to this, just go to the show notes and we'll put a link right to the event.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks for another episode of the Groundswell Marketing Podcast. If you have any other feedback, shoot me a note, DM. I'm Scott at groundswell.marketing. And until next time, mahalo.